Darrin Bauming and Michael Remis in for Rick Ralph. It is the Don Vito Roundtable, all part of Jets Lunch on TSN 1290 and TSN 3. Lots to come in this hour. Shane Knighty's going to pop in to talk about the offseason and what it's like to be a National Hockey League player during those long summer months. Ken Dryden and Brad Park, both members of the 1972 Team Canada Summit Series. They are traveling coast to coast 44 years after the fact of that amazing 8-game series against the Russians. Kenny Albert from NBC Sports is going to pop in and help us tee up Game 5, the Stanley Cup Final. Right now, we welcome in our next guest. General Manager of the Arizona Coyotes, John Chayka, joins us here. John, how are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Thanks for having me.
No, appreciate you taking the time. It's been a little over a month since you were named the new general manager of the Arizona Coyotes. How has that month been? Has it been much of a transition because you've been part of this organization for a few years now?
Yeah, no, it's been a bit of a transition for sure, but it's been fun and exciting, and got lots of work to do. So it's been busy, and as it should be. So part of my role last year was involved in all this, these types of duties. So in that sense, it's not a new experience necessarily, but I think whenever you're making the final say, it's a different feeling for sure.
John, at 26 years old, you're the youngest GM in professional sports. You know, we talk with a lot of players where you have that welcome to the NHL moment. Have you had a welcome to the NHL moment where you kind of have to pinch yourself and think, wow, I'm really here. I did it?
Yeah, no, it's a tough question. I guess maybe there were some of those last year when I took the job and moved from my previous business to take on a role for Coyotes. But no, nothing so far that I can really pinpoint that I would say is been a moment like that.
You know, John, I was doing some reading before this interview, and I read that you've been analyzing video of hockey games since age 8. I mean, what kind of a video analysis was an 8-year-old John Chayka doing?
No, I think it was more about just trying to improve my own game, right? Just trying to find comparable players and trying to understand, what it is that actual scouts would potentially be looking for in your own game. So I think that's kind of how it started for me, is just a curiosity about the game and what is actually driving value in the game and how you can potentially understand it further or measure it better. And, that was kind of the genesis of my previous business. And now it's, obviously trying to apply that information and research to try and find some opportunities to improve the Coyotes.
John Chayka, our guest here on Jets Lunch and the Don Vito Roundtable on TSN 1290 and TSN 3. John, obviously there's value, and teams across the National Hockey League have expanded, maybe their scope of the value of analytics in hockey. Have you seen, while, alongside the progression of teams maybe adopting it and accepting it a little bit more, have you seen a progression in the numbers themselves and what you guys are able to dig into to learn about hockey players and hockey teams?
Yeah, I think everyone's continually looking for an edge, and why wouldn't you? So I think, our duty as a manager is, I think we have, the duty to be thorough in our analysis and to try and understand as much as we can about any type of a transaction, because they're multi-million-dollar transactions. So, whether it's trying to understand a player's makeup or understand their body and kind of the propensity to get hurt or not, or to, push through injuries, then, that's a piece of the puzzle. And then obviously from the performance standpoint, you're trying to understand it's a kind of, a lot of times it's an out-of-sample projection where you've got a player who's coming from a different team and a different situation and a different coaching staff, and you're trying to make the best projection of how that player will play for you. And then you're trying to, try and value that properly so that you get hopefully an undervalued asset in your mind. So, I think that's where things are going, is you're trying to get past looking at past performance and to value things on past performance and try to value things based off of future performance. And it's a lot more difficult to do than it sounds, but I think that's what everyone's trying to understand better.
John, being a young general manager, this being your first year now, as you've been on the job for just about a month with the Arizona Coyotes, what's the biggest challenge for you in this first year?
That's a great question. I'm not exactly sure. I guess maybe I'm a little green to know exactly what will be the largest challenge. I know we've got a team that's we're picking 7th this upcoming draft, and that means that we were outside the playoffs and we weren't good enough. So perhaps the biggest challenge is to continue to grow the group and get enough good players that we make the playoffs next year. And again, it's not as easy to do as it sounds. There's a lot of bright people in the industry, and everyone's trying to get better. It's a zero growth industry, right? Where if I win, I'm taking that win from somebody else. It's not like there's 90 games being played next year, and I can just kind of take those wins from some other area. I have to take them from somebody. So, that's what I'm trying to do in this first year, is just try to continue to grow our team and put us in a place where we feel like we can be competitive night in and night out.
You'll be working closely this season with head coach Dave Tippett. He's now been named Executive Vice President of Hockey Operations. How important is that relationship between general manager and head coach when building a team?
I think integration throughout the organization. I mean, obviously that one's a pretty natural one, and I think it has to be seamless. But even from organization to organization, in the sense of our American League team to our NHL team, and our medical staff to our training staff to our coaching staff to management again, and obviously that all integrates with players. I think if you're not working with one another seamlessly like that, then you're probably behind. And you just take a look at the best organizations. They have great stability, and they have good people in place that trust each other to do their jobs, and then they help each other to do their jobs even better. So, that's what we're trying to achieve here, and we've taken some real positive steps in the first month, but still got a long way to go.
John Chayka, General Manager of the Arizona Coyotes, joining us here on Jets Lunch and the Don Vito Roundtable on TSN 1290 and TSN 3. John, where would you like to see your team improve? Have you identified its weaknesses and where you would like to make strides this season?
Well, I guess one of the nice areas of being a team that's missed the playoffs in a few years is that you have quite a few needs, and so you try to prioritize those needs and kind of attack a problem to try and find solutions as best you can. But right now we're not being too picky. I think the past number of years now we've finished near the bottom of pretty much every statistical category in defensive metrics. So we're just trying to address that. Now, is that the defense? Is it goaltending? Is it forwards? I think they all kind of play a role, and so you're just trying to improve across the board. But for me, that's one area that if we don't improve on that, then going into next year, we don't have that chance to be a competitive team night in and night out. So I'd say that's our focus, but there's a few different angles, and like I said, you're trying to prioritize things and trying to time it. I guess that's the trick of my job, but that doesn't mean that if an opportunity comes up that you think would make your team better, that you'd be too picky.
Away, John, the teams are getting better these days. We hear so much about drafting and developing. Now, the Coyotes have one of the top prospect pools in all of hockey. Recently, you moved the AHL team to Tucson. How important is that proximity between the NHL team and the AHL team?
Well, I just spoke about integration from one team to the next. I think geography plays a big role in that. I think at times our guys were out in Springfield, which is a good place for us, but just that geographical distance, sometimes I'm sure they might as well felt like they were in Sweden or something like that, because it's a tough bridge to gap to bridge, and we're just it's a home run for us to be in Tucson. And like you said, we've got a great group of young players that are graduating that are going to be playing in that organization next year, and we've got a lot of resources that we put in place that'll be shared between our NHL and the AHL team that would have never been possible had that move not occur. So, as you put together a strategy, a lot of stuff looks nice on paper, but then when it actually comes to executing it, that's kind of the difficult part. And so, for our organization, not to just say we're about drafting and developing, but to actually invest the resources and our ownership to step up the way they did, I think, it's a home run for where we're at and where we need to go. And it certainly is a huge step for everyone.
Coyotes General Manager John Chayka joining us here on Jets Lunch and the Don Vito Roundtable on TSN 1290 and TSN 3. John, 25 years ago, scouts were mailing in their scouting reports, and the evolution to fax and to email. How much has that technology changed in tracking players, in collecting data and information? And do you feel that maybe because your approach is a newer approach, that you maybe have a bit of a lead or a head up on the rest of the league, or at least some of the league?
Yeah, I think the proliferation of technology certainly helped that curve to be expedited. But that's another kind of strategic area you can look into, is how you leverage technology to improve efficiency. And like you said, mail is not the most efficient way of doing of getting information across and out to the masses, but I think it allows us to coordinate our scouting staff maybe a bit better in terms of just being able to get a deeper dive on our prospects or players that we're looking at. And so for me, it's always about kind of that continual feedback loop of a scout has a report or they have a kind of insight that they get from a game, and that's great. But, there's a body of work that goes into making a decision. And so you then kind of analyze what that sense is or how that scout feels about a specific player, and you want to know how true it is, or if it was just maybe an isolated viewing, or if it actually is indicative of that player's greater body of work. And so some of that's where some analytics can come in to help kind of be a check and a balance on a scouting staff, and vice versa. So again, I think that's all stuff that wouldn't have been capable of being done 20 years ago. But certainly, as technology evolves, I think the process evolves, and we hope to be at the forefront of that.
John, really appreciate you taking the time. Thanks for this.
No problem. Appreciate it.
There
Have a good day.
You too. John Chayka, he's the new general manager of the Arizona Coyotes since taking over just about a month ago, joining us here on Jets Lunch and the Don Vito Roundtable. When we come back, Shane Knighty from TSN and TSN 1290 will join us, and we'll touch on a couple topics, including what it's like for a National Hockey League player during the offseason, and we'll surely touch on upcoming Game 5 tomorrow night between the Penguins and the San Jose Sharks as the Stanley Cup Final Series continues. Michael Remis and Darrin Bauming, you're listening to Jets Lunch and watching on TSN 3 and on TSN 1290.